Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Japan. I said that very fast. Sorry, I'm so excited. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Japan Archives. This would be our bonus, but we've decided that basically, if we're doing a bonus every other week, it's pretty much, not a bonus. We're just going to name them now. We're just going to keep numbering them logical order. Every other week will still be a shorter episode. We're just not going to call it a bonus anymore. Very quickly, it is the new year. How have you been, Heather?
明けましておめでとうございます。
Happy New Year.
Good. January is flying, and I wasn't
Yes.
expecting that, but it's cold, and I'm not enjoying that. The kotatsu is nice. How about yourself?
I mean, yesterday was Hatsugama, so the first tea ceremony of the year so I do tea ceremony classes now, and so it was very nice. Our tea teacher had her daughter doing the ceremony. We had the two different types of tea, the one that most people would associate with the tea ceremony, just normal tea, and then we also had I think it's called koicha, which is like the very thick, strong tasting dark green tea. It's more it's kind of hard to describe it in a nice way, but it kind of looks like very dark green sludge and has a very similar texture, but it has a very intense matcha flavor to it. So first time I tried that, it was powerful. I would definitely have it every now and then as part of a ceremony, but it would not be my go-to.
It's not
I think.
drinkable.
No.
Nah. I'm going to have a nice cup of tea. No, it's not.
No, it's very thick, and I poured the bowl to drink it, but it didn't arrive. I was just waiting for it to slowly pour out of the cup. But anyway, it was very nice to do. We had the ceremony, then we had like the bento lunch together.
Ooh.
Very beautiful. And her family was also there as well, her grandsons. Very nice, very relaxing. It was about 3-4 hours, but definitely worth it. But for a very quick introduction into the complete story surrounding the origins of the Ise Grand Shrine. Because there are a few extra little things surrounding it. Not much, but I thought it would make sense and be interesting to kind of condense it into one of its own episodes. Going a bit over what we said during Emperor Suinin's reign, plus the extra bits. During the reign of Emperor Suinin, the Jino Shotoki states that the Ise Grand Shrine was actually mentioned all the way back during the time of Ninigi. So he was the person who first descended and led to the first emperor. Ise Grand Shrine is mentioned during Ninigi's descent to Earth by a kami known as Sarudo Bikona, when he stated Ninigi would head to the headwaters of the Isuzu River at Sanagata in Ise. That was kind of hinting in the past that it would become a sacred location, as that's where the Ise Grand Shrine was later founded. Now, as we know, we've said before, it was eventually Yamato Hime who eventually chose the actual area for the shrine. The care of Amaterasu before her was in the hands of the princess Toyosuke Iribime. That was passed on then from her to Yamato Hime, and so she went off searching for a place to enshrine Amaterasu, the goddess or the kami of the sun. And on her way, she traveled through a place called Sasahata in the province of Uda, and then through the province of Mino before finally arriving in the area of Ise. The Jino Shotoki expands upon her tours of all these various areas, saying that this was at the Sun Kami's command, and further saying that she chose the headwaters of the Isuzu River in the Watari district of Ise on the 26th year, 10th month of Suinin's reign. So we kind of have a very specific date, even though these emperors are kind of still legendary and we don't know. It would be possible to figure out a potential actual day in history that it was chosen. So she arrives in the area, she picks this place, and then Amaterasu communes with Yamato Hime herself, saying that she wished to dwell in Ise. I like the place you have found, I wish to dwell here, so the shrine was built in that place. And when the shrine was finally built, Amaterasu was said to have descended from heaven to visit the site as well. After the shrine was built, depending on the historical text that you read, one says that Emperor Suinin then came himself with the sacred regalia and housed them in the Naiku shrine there themselves. However, the Jino Shotoki says that it was Yamato Hime who placed the sword and the mirror into the shrine herself. When she was first in the area, of course, we said that she decided to pick the headwaters of the Isuzu River in the Watari district, but she didn't actually choose this by herself. When she was there, she made inquiries and she got some advice from a man known as Otano Mikoto. And he is said to have been a descendant of a kami called Saruda Biko, which again is probably the same kami as Saruda Bikona, who we mentioned right at the start. So again, linking back to the previous kami. It was this man, Otano Mikoto, who was the one who told her about the specific place at the headwaters that she ended up choosing. And he stated that in this sacred place, there were 50 bells arranged in the shape of heaven. And that is why she went there and chose the place. And there is even an extra legend that said that the jeweled spear of heaven had also been placed in that area, which is why it was even more sacred. It was interesting to see the jeweled spear of heaven mentioned here because we haven't mentioned it since episode 1. 3 years ago, we have not mentioned the jeweled spear of heaven at all.
Here it is again.
And here it is again, finally 3 years later. So the spear itself was the spear that created the first island of Japan. It was that very rare, legendary, sacred item that Izanami and Izanami, they thrust the spear into the ocean, they brought it up, and from the droplets that fell from the spear, the first island of Onogoroshima was made. And the only other information we ever had about the spear was that it was noted in a document known as the Kujiki that they used the spear as the central pillar of their house. And after that, it's not really mentioned in any document that I have managed to read or come across yet. So to have it suddenly mentioned here as one of the reasons why the Ise Grand Shrine was founded is kind of interesting. And also, now that I think about it, with then the bells being in the shape of heaven, I guess you could say that there is the implication that that is potentially where Izanami and Izanagi lived. And that could be also where their house was after they descended to Japan.
So this mention of the jeweled spear, is this from the shrine's own history, or where did you get the information about the jeweled spear for this one?
The legend that states the spear was kept in the area comes from a document that is not the Kojiki or the Nihongi. It again comes from the Jino Shotoki, which translates to a chronicle of gods and sovereigns. And it was a document that comes many, many, many centuries after the Nihongi and the Kojiki were first compiled. This work comes from, it was compiled between 1338 and 1341 by a man known as Kitabatake Chikafusa. Like I said, it does come far, far, far in the future after those original documents that mention the Jewel Spear of Heaven. So did he find a different document with extra stories that were included in the Nihongi? Did he put it in? Was it just a rumor or was it a story that he concocted himself? We can't really be sure.
Divine revelation.
Or a divine revelation, perhaps. Because we have seen before, even with emperors and things, that the kami do come to them in dreams and give them extra knowledge or advice. So there is the potential for that being the case as well. It kind of also makes sense in that it's not mentioned in those original documents and that it's suddenly just like, oh, by the way, remember that spear that we haven't mentioned in decades? Well, this is where it was. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Around this area in the story, the only extra bits of information I have is we know, at least according to some of the documents we know who the first head priest and the first high priest of the Ise Grand Shrine were. So the high priest was known as the Saishu back then. I think some of the terminologies and titles have changed into the modern day, but the first high priest or the Saishu was a man known as O Kashima. And we've already mentioned him before. He was mentioned during, again, the reign of Emperor Suinin, and he was mentioned alongside the members of the 5 Daibu, who were called Hikoku Nifuku, Takehi no Muraji, Tochine no Omuraji, and Takenuma Kahawake. And basically, it was a very random side note in the story of Emperor Suinin where they all were gathered by the emperor to talk about how wisdomful the previous emperor had been. Do you remember this? There was a really random side note in the story of Emperor Suinin.
Right now, it's not ringing me dead a bell.
It's not ringing a bell. I mean, I'm not surprised. It was a very random side note. However, it
Yeah.
kind of it's nice when we do get extra information about previous people we've
Mhm.
mentioned instead of it just being like, here's a new person. They did one thing and their name disappears into history, which is actually the final person I'm going to mention. So the head priest, which was a title back then known as O Kanushi, was a man known as O Hatanushi, which is very similar to the title of O Kanushi now that I think about it and read it out loud. So whether his name is based off of his title or whether his name led to the title, not entirely sure now that I read it. However, like I said, not much information here, and that is the more complete story surrounding the foundation, at least in the legendary time frame of the founding of the Ise Grand Shrine.
Okay, that was fun because revisiting something all the way from the first episode, just random out of
Yes.
nowhere, and then revisiting like Amaterasu and a few of the other names, even though one of them I couldn't recall. But they're all tying in, and I wonder if this is like the last. I almost want to see if we have another like in 3 years another reference to the spear again.
It
Um,
would be interesting to see, are there any really random documents that just happen to say like, "Oh, by the way, the spear ended up here," and blah, 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 things like that. Because it does surprise me that, we have an entire history of the sword that was found in Yamata no Orochi, the spear, that the item that physically created Japan just was kind of lost to history. They didn't make any stories about it, which is kind of interesting.
why do I feel like in some video game somewhere there is this as a possible weapon that you can use?
Oh, for sure. There will be video games that have used Japanese history as inspiration, and there are characters based off kami
Mhm.
or old Japanese legends and weapons inspired by all of these things, for sure.
Oh, I have a couple of questions for you too. First one, I'm gonna
Right.
go backwards to front, is the bells and the shape of heaven. What was that shape look like? I was wondering how could you was it 50 bells you think you said? In my head,
50 bells, yes.
I'm like taking the bells and trying to change them in different shapes and I'm how?
I mean, for heaven, all of the information we've read and researched so far about heaven, it only talks about different places in heaven. We've
Hmm.
had Amaterasu's weaving halls. We've had the fields of heaven. Of course, the rock cave that was in heaven, and then she hid in it. But technically, that cave is somewhere on Japan. But nothing ever described the shape. So whether it was just said, maybe there's a document
Mhm.
we've yet to find that describes the shape of heaven, or it was just said and left open to interpretation to the reader. Not entirely sure. But it would be interesting to try and find that out.
The other question I had was the journey that she took. The different regions, do we know what they correspond to now? I think you said Uday and a couple others. I didn't write them down quickly enough.
Uda
Uda,
and
not Uday, that's arm.
Mino.
Arm.
Yeah, Ude is arm, yes. As of right now, so Uda, I am not entirely sure where Uda is. It's listed as a province, but it's not actually one of the bigger provinces. So maybe it was in just a small district and I haven't come across the modern day location. However, Mino province, which was also known as Noshu, was an old province of Japan, which is located in now Gifu prefecture,
Ah, okay.
which does make sense because if you go south from Gifu Prefecture on the western side, you are going down to the area of Ise. So probably Uda itself is going to be one of the provinces that bordered on Mino in the Gifu Prefecture area. So at least the geography matches up.
I would definitely hope so at that point. Ah, okay. So we've got some new locations, new references. This was a good one. Nice
Yeah, thank you.
nice revisiting and more names that
Even more names to
it's like
remember.
I gave up trying to memorize them.
I mean, that's fair.
Thank you, Thomas. This was great.
It's okay, my pleasure. As for next week's episode, guys, I haven't picked a topic yet. I do need to. I mean, I have so many options at this point. So I will endeavor to find something of interest for you all, unless, of course, Heather has an idea and wishes to lead an episode. But until then, that's everything from me. And oh, yes, thank you to everyone who subscribed to the YouTube channel since we announced it last week, even
Yes,
though I
thank
didn't tell
you.
the actual name of the channel. So just look for Japan Archives. It has the same logo as the podcast. And yeah, we are still figuring out what kind of shorts or extra videos we'll post on there for you all. But to everyone who already subscribed to the channel, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. But yeah, that is everything from me this week. How about you?
I think that's going to do it for me too.
Okay, everyone. Well, we will catch you next week. Bye for now.
皆さん気をつけて、またね。